Ooh. Ooh. Well, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Ooh. Welcome to a very, very icy cold and very misty morning here today on the Good Morning Walk. As always, good morning, good morning, good morning. I don't know if you can see over there the cows in the mist. It's the train just gone past us there as well. Oh, good morning from the wee hours. Good morning to you. Like I say, slightly later than usual this morning, but JL, good morning to you. Good morning, freezing in Denmark too. Morning from Lubin, good morning to you as well. Kroban, good afternoon to you. Cathalo G, good morning to you. Good morning, Matt. How are you? 5 this morning for frost. Like this definitely is very. Morning. It's very, very misty, as you can see today. I don't know if you can, like I say, just completely surrounded by mist this morning. Oh, frozen ponies today. Most probably, like I say, those. I think they might be all up in the top today. From when I was coming down, so that might be right at the end when we get to see some ponies today. But so yes, what a week! What a week it's been. And I'll tell you now, there are probably this weekend some very serious soul searching going on in the Tories, because they've got to weigh up the serious pros and cons of keeping Boris. Because obviously there was the bring your own booze or the bog email. You know, bring your own booze. So that was the first big one, of course, pretty much destroying, Boris Johnson's excuses to essentially have this. And of course, that's when, David Falconer, thank you very much. You're late, it's almost evening here. Yes, I am a bit late this morning. But I've had an espresso this morning, so I'm revved up and ready to go this morning. Like I say, I had a bit of a lie-in, that's why I was a bit late this morning. I got up and it was like, initially it was like 7:30. So I was like, I'll just have another 10 minutes before I get up ready to go. And then, you put your head back down, you wake up and you're like, oh, whoa, wow, that's the time. Jesus Cantwell, good morning, my fellow party animals. Woohoo, indeed. So, for those of you looking for the ponies in the mist today, ta-da! So, above all today, so that was the first big one, the bog off email. And that seems to have really hit home. Hello from sunny Austria. Well, it's definitely more sunnier than here. But that was the first big one. And that was really what seemed to set the cat amongst the pigeons among all this. Tory saying he should go. The newspapers, especially the right-wing newspapers, indeed the morning after, coming after him at speed, saying, hey Boris, what on earth are you doing? Indeed, I think it was only Anne Widdecombe, surprise, surprise, actually was I think the only one that stood up for him. I don't know if she's changed her mind since then, of course, but she very might well have. But then, of course, it then emerged, and this is going to be, I think, the key one, because obviously from that, a lot of Tories were like, okay, he should resign, he should go. This is really bad. You know, we've put Boris on warning. We were hoping that Partygate was behind us now, left back in December. You know, Boris apologised, which did not go over well at all. And the other thing that Tories have really been saying recently is that they're being bombarded by letters and emails and messages from their constituents basically saying, what on earth are you doing? Hold him to account. And I've said this before, that, you know, emailing your MP matters, and I think even more so if you've got a Tory MP today in your constituency. I'd get on the old email and basically send them a message saying, you know, what on earth are you doing? You need to hold Boris to account. You know, it's time to, you know, he should resign. Put them more under pressure that way, because that is almost certainly what they've been saying has also been happening this week as well. You've also had the Jacob Rees-Mogg, of all people, go to bat for Boris. And to a T, it looks like, the Scottish Conservative Party unanimously has basically said, yeah, Boris should resign. And Jacob Rees-Mogg then said that their leader was a lightweight, that his calls for his resignation mean nothing in the grander schemes of life, which, well, quite funny, because it almost seems like at this point the Conservatives have completely dropped the unionist parts in their full title of their name. For obviously those people who may or may not know, the full title, of course, of the Conservative Party is the Conservative and Unionist Party. So yeah, that was like the reaction from the first email. Complete, you know, unbelievable outrage and outpouring. And yet the question is on the top of the Tories is do we keep Boris? Because Boris is what's holding together their very bizarre coalition of voters. It was Boris being there on the ballot paper that won them all those Northern Red Wall seats. So there is very, very much I think especially from the Northern Research Group, the Red Wall Tories, who are like, oh my God, what do we do? Because they've condemned him, but they haven't sent their letters to the 1922 committee. There's been very, very few Tories who have openly admitted sending their letters in. So even though there is this open act of saying, you know, we condemn what Boris has done, you know, this culture he seems to have created in Downing Street, all this stuff and nonsense that he's got going on, and, you know, he should resign or whatever. But there's no action on that. And ironically, by the way, this is exactly how the Tories have acted every single time things like 0-hour contracts have come up. Every single time the Tories have promised to do something about 0-hour contracts, they've just come back and gone, oh, well, we're not going to do anything. So there's almost this tacit approval of the status quo. And I think that's what seems to be the state at the moment. I think they themselves don't know what to do. But they need to realise that Boris this week has probably lost all his popularity. He has nothing left because we've only gone over the reaction to the first email. That was literally the Tuesday and Wednesday reaction, you know. You also had again, fellow Conservatives standing up at PMQs and even saying, you know, the irony of this will be when the report comes out that it may be some junior minister who takes the blame for all this and ends up losing their job, but the Prime Minister won't. And he hit the nail right on the head, and that was a Conservative saying that. So there is, I think, confusion going on here in the Tory ranks. I think that they generally don't know what to do. They put Boris there in the first place. They knew exactly who they were putting there. And they were just hoping that the old, you know, Bojo magic would play off, and that anything that he would do would just, you know, be water off a duck's back, and, you know, the public would just react, oh, it's all right, it's just Boris being Boris. That was what the hope was. That's what the hope was under all this. And yeah, how many letters to the 1922 committee have been confirmed? I don't know exactly, because they don't say, unfortunately. Unless they reach that magic number, they don't come out and say. I've only seen one Tory so far come out and say he sent a letter. So there's that. And not only that, bear in mind, that wasn't the worst of it. Remember, that reaction on everything I've just said to you was just the reactions from the first revelations of the bring your own booze emails revealed by ITV. Because the next revelation, of course, was, and the right-wing newspapers splashed this all over their front pages as well, that while the Queen mourned alone and buried Prince Philip, you know, Boris partied. You know, the Queen mourns, Boris parties. And I'll tell you this now, overwhelmingly in the Conservative Party, they are very, very pro-monarchy in the Conservative Party. Very pro-monarchy. So that will not have gone over well with fellow party members. And of course, not only that, we had a local And again, I don't know how many are going to follow suit, but a local Conservative party passed a resolution at a meeting saying that Boris Johnson must resign. Now that is in itself very, very unusual that an action like that ever happens in the Conservative Party. And it came from, again, one of their heartlands saying, you know, he must resign. And yes, you are right there. Sorry, I missed your name there. Just reading your message before I could read your name. You are right there. Because this whole process, first of all, they've got to get the required amount of letters. And once the 1922 committee then gets the required amount of letters, that then start a vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister. Ratmash, that's it. Thank you very much. Tudors Cantwell, thank you very much. A conspiracy theory is that the Telegraph is trying to cover for Prince Andrew by throwing Boris under the bus. That is quite the conspiracy theory, but that was already happening anyway. I don't think that would have not happened, to be honest, all the stuff that's happened with Prince Andrew this week, but I'm more interested in the stuff that's gone on with Boris this week than Andrew. Because to be honest, that's going to... The stuff with Boris is far, far, far more going to affect this country than what Prince Andrew's been up to. So, what happens is then the vote then kicks off, and I think a lot of Tories are looking around each other because the vote that happens to replace the vote of no confidence is a secret ballot. It's not public. So they're allowed to, they're allowed to say, this is how many votes have happened, but you're not allowed to say who voted which way. So it's a secret ballot. So there are probably many Tories looking at each other thinking, which way are you going to vote? It's a secret ballot. All that's going to be revealed is the numbers. And they have to have a very, very confident stretch that they can replace and win that vote of no confidence. So those are the things that we've got to look for, that at the moment we're looking for. Because again, the Queen and what that happened, and of course how that party happened, again, massive outpouring yet again of people in public. Boris Johnson must go, Boris resign, all trending on Twitter on that Thursday. And of course later on Thursday it also emerged that there had also been two other parties. So this is absolutely off the scale now, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the weekend, because it's not just one party, it's now been multiple parties during lockdown. Obviously the cheese and wine party, the business meeting. Basically, later that day, you obviously had Oliver Dowden come out and say, oh yes, these are the rules that are coming in, these are what you have to obey by. And it's been said for a while now, and I think this is really, really, truly going to let it sink in, that this is, one rule for them, another for everyone else. And it's like, what's going to happen? You know, but you've got to wonder, what on earth are these Tories thinking? And I think it goes back to the fact that any vote of no confidence is a secret ballot. So they don't know who's going to vote for him to go, who's going to vote for him to stay. And I think that's what's really worrying a lot of Tory MPs. And I think that, as someone else said earlier in the chat, so far there have only been 3. I was only aware of 1, but apparently, again, someone said in chat there have been now 3 Tories that have come out publicly and said that they've sent a letter. So my guess is this weekend could be quite interesting. We're still on Boris watch, and this is all set to continue. All this still probably going to roll out more into next week. There we go. Oh, there we go. But yeah, you know, you've got to honestly wonder what on earth the Tories are playing at. Because imagine you're a Tory MP, or even a Tory Red Wall MP, and you're sitting there, you've heard all these revelations this week, you're getting emails, letters from your constituents saying, hey, what are you doing? Hurry up and get him out. He's an idiot. Hold him to some sort of accountability. Yeah, it's I'd love to tell you what on earth is going on in the Tory party members' heads. In fact, that would be an insane thing to be this weekend, to fly on the wall of many of the Tories' conversations that are probably happening this week. But yeah, and it's going to react bad on them. It's really going to react bad on them, because obviously one of the big things it's hiding behind the tree. Obviously one of the big things about this is, of course, the fact that only 3 have sent letters. You've now got it's having a nibble on me. You've now got some and I think this is where it'll come to. I think if the public does not see, after such outcry from the public against this, and the Tories do nothing about it, then I think what especially the message Labour has to go with, and I think this is what Starmer or Angela Rayner needs to do at next PMQs, if Boris is still there, is to not address Boris, but address the members of the Conservative Party and just say this: you've all been saying Boris must resign. And I think, again, she should mention by name those 3 people, again, there might be more, who have publicly said that they've sent letters to the 1922 committee. Commend them for their bravery and say that this is not aimed at them. And basically say that the public should know that you have the strength to hold your leader to accountability, while the rest of you, by remaining silent, by not trying to remove Boris, you are tacitly giving your approval that these parties happened, and that you are fine with those happening. I mean, that's the message that they need to be sending out. You know, by saying, you know, all last week you're saying, you know, Boris should resign. They need to get it across, not only to them, but to the public, that the inaction of essentially the Tory party in not removing their leader should be, you know, an open act of saying that they approve of what Boris Johnson did, that they approved of these parties. That's the message that Labour and especially the Lib Dems need to be sent, that the Labour and the Lib Dems need to be sending to their, you know, constituents. And that's the message that they need to be put forwarding, especially from Monday. And they need to try and carry that message through to PMQs and essentially address the you know, the Tory MPs. That's what they need to do. You know, your inaction over, you know, what Boris has done can be seen as the approval for what Boris has done. Essentially just goad them into saying, you know, do it. Send your letters. Publicly declare. You know, I think that's what the Labour strategy really needs to be at this point. That, you know, their inaction signals their very own approval for Boris, and then that won't play well with them either. Because obviously, if they've all been out this week saying, like the vast majority of Tory MPs said Boris should resign, you know, Boris should go, and yet he hasn't, quote, done the right thing, then it should be on the party to remove him. Because they know that he's done wrong. It's been so obvious, you know, to what's happened here. So that's the move that honestly Labour really should make at the moment. And I think if they can get that to land, then I think the Tories will seriously do something. But even then, though, let's say if Boris manages to survive that vote of no confidence, that in itself can then be shown to the public of, look, these Tories approve of Boris Johnson's actions, you know. So either way, it's a win-win for Labour. It's just how do they obviously play out this week, and I think this weekend is going to be interesting because like I say, we've had yet more revelations of more parties, and of course the culture that Boris has fostered going in with number 10, which again is not playing well with the general public. So it should absolutely be seen as, you know, it's time to let him go, guys. You know, that should be that should generally be the message being sent out here. And it's yeah, it's gone full crazy mode now, because I was fully expecting, especially after the Queen stuff came out, I thought that's it, but he's gone. No Tory can, survive outdoing the Queen. And especially what Boris has indeed done, partying while the Queen mourned alone. That has not played well, and that will not play well in the Conservative mindset. As I've said before, they are very, very pro-monarchy, especially the Tory party base. So, I have to apologise, I'm not looking at the screen, because this path is very, very, very muddy today. So, I was surprised that didn't claim his scalp, shall we say, on that. But again, we're going to have to see what happens this weekend. I'm very surprised Boris managed to last a week. But then again, it's Boris Johnson. And as many people have said, Boris just has no shame. His apology did not go over well. His actions have been perceived as overwhelmingly negative and, unfit for office, and that he should resign. And bear in mind, the Tories should have known how unfit he was for office because of his debacles and controversies he had during his time as, Mayor for London. So it's not like they should have expected anything less from him at this point. But it's, as always, the ball is now well and truly squarely with the Tory party. And as I said, it will play out like this. That the 1922 committee will receive those letters, and then we go to a vote of no confidence. And it really is just the question now of what are the Tories going to do? And of course, quietly in the wings, you have Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak very quietly waiting in the wings to replace him. Of course, Rishi Sunak, obviously the key point missing this week, apparently he was in Devon, which by the way, what an excuse. Not only that, but what a key point to point out that the Tories have failed to build any infrastructure for what is again meant to be a key seat for them. Rishi Sunak goes off to Devon. He's unreachable. To then, which the response was, well, we couldn't get the Wi-Fi down there. And you're like, hold on for a second. Maybe something the people of Devon may want to seriously consider thinking about for the future in this. And of course, one of the other things we brought up this week, again, the issue of British farming being destroyed by the Tories. There's the fact that the farmers of the UK are now turning fully against Boris Johnson, something that I've said before when North Shropshire happened. One of the first things to come out had been that the farmers had tallied all this up and said, we're not going to vote for the Conservatives ever again. And that was down in North Shropshire. And it looks as if this message is indeed being carried through. And remember, the farmers are a very key voting bloc for the Tories. So we have to seriously wonder what could very well happen at a next general election if somehow, in some way, Teflon Boris manages to survive. Needless to say, their inactivity is an opportunity for the opposition to jump on. And I've said this before, but there's a massive precedent now for Labour. If they want to, again, if they do it, they could put forward, like as a general election promise, like reform of, anti-corruption reform and stuff like that, and take away the Prime Minister's capability to be the one to start investigations. Have this now as a separate unit where if there's an allegations of stuff, they're the ones who go in investigating it. They're the ones who dish out the punishment. The Prime Minister should have no say, of course, in all this. And they should be able to, go all the way up to being able to, deselect an MP if they think the punishment obviously fits the crime of what they've done. And like I say, I think a whole raft of, anti-corruption measures would not only play well at a general election, especially like the next one, but it has to go, and it has to get in very, very quickly, of course. But we'll have to see. But again, that's something that definitely that Labour need to do. And I have discussed that at a local Labour Party, with my local Labour Party, putting that into a resolution. Of course, that's the hard part, putting it into a resolution for us to pass. Oh yeah, that's another thing as well, by the way. Now officially 325 local Labour parties now support reforming the voting system to a PR, a proportional representation system. So the push for PR is well and truly gathering pace now. And of course, last time the Labour Party conference, the unions were the one that sunk the vote, which was very, very disappointing, to be honest. But I think next time it'll get through, and then that will become official Labour Party policy to reform the voting system, and that will, I think, win quite a lot of support for them at the next general election. And like I say, it's something they can't ignore, the fact that you've now got so many local Labour parties now supporting that push for PR. So good news on that front. But like I said, it's going to be a long fight, and I think that obviously this is just the first part of it, getting the the Labour Party, especially to support it. But Labour for PR, by the way, if you want to follow them and their efforts on this, well worth the follow. Well worth the follow. And you can see their efforts to push this through as a Labour Party policy, which they've been doing quite sterling work, to be honest, in changing this through, so good work for them. Yeah, what if Boris's conduct led to PR system? That would be very something. I wish Starmer would focus more on politics and show leadership by being a lot more inclusive with the left and right. To be honest, I think we're really going to have to wait and see what he puts forward as an offer. Like I say, we've had a lot, actually, stuff really happened recently. Like, he's put forward, as I said before, he supported the windfall tax on oil and gas companies. He's supporting a wealth tax. Again, there's a lot of people on the left who say, Starmer's not doing that good. But to be honest, he has talked about a lot of stuff that the left do want and talk about all the time. So, yeah, Keir Starmer's probably not going to deliver like 100% of what the left want. But then, that's politics. And as I said before, every single time it comes to a vote of the UK public, where do you stand on your politics? Are you left, right? And and I say this all the time, 25% come out, say they're on the right, 25% say they're on the left. And of course, I know it's very much, especially on the internet, being a meme of like being a centrist. But in the UK, that is a thing. And overwhelmingly, 35% of respondents to all these polls come out to be centrists. So any party that generally ever wants to gain power will never ever do so by just appealing to the right or left. You have to appeal to that centrist ground as well. And to an extent, I obviously don't 100% agree with everything that Starmer does. But he is doing a good job so far. I can't, I do always say, give Starmer fair due with what he's been saying, stuff about the wealth tax, the windfall tax. Yeah, 100% agree. Do it. Go for it. We've obviously now got to wait and see. Oh, there we go. Managed to stumble across that. What happens there? So, and I think that's what annoys so many people on the left. On the left, do they're just so annoyed that they're not getting everything they want, and you're like, come on. This is how politics works. You've got to compromise sometimes, and yes, you're never ever going to get everything you want. But that's how politics works. That's how voting for MPs work. I don't necessarily agree with everything Dan Jarvis ever says, but I would vote for him because he is the Labour MP. He disagreed with a lot of stuff that Corbyn said as well, which again I sort of agreed and disagreed with him on. And I've said this before. Corbyn overall, while I liked a lot of his policies, really wasn't a good leader. I think he would have made a far better deputy leader than he would have like a leader. But then again, we can't, that argument is now in the past. We're now going to move forward, of course. And oh yes, yes, you are right. It's not only just reform the House of Commons, it is House of Lords reform as well. Turn that, as I've said before, into like a regional House of Regional Representatives because that reform would pass very, very well, very easily, because there's a lot of people out there that do agree that the House of Lords desperately needs reform and needs turning into like a a full-on electable, second chamber. So that is definitely something that that we need to seriously address. And that reform, not only would it pass muster with people on the left and right, it is something that a lot of people, when asked, do want to see happen. So it is almost definitely something that we could do. And then, even if, let's say the reform for the Commons doesn't really pass, even if you can change the Lords to a PR system and a voted in, it would be a massive sea change for British politics, I'll tell you that now. Because the Tories, as we've seen under any PR system, would never ever get more than 30% of the vote. We'd have, coalitions here. So the fact that, again, on the 17th, by the way, it is the votes for the crime and policing bill, especially around the obviously the rules for banning protesting, which again, very, very worrying, the fact that those rules are there. So something that desperately needs to go. By the way, on my YouTube feed section, I did post a link very recently for the Kill the Bill what do they call it now? The Kill the Bill having a complete brain fart. Yeah, the Kill the Bill thing where you sign it, the petition, that's it. The petition, yes, the Kill the Bill petition, that's it. The Kill the Bill petition. I did post it this week, just yesterday actually, not on my my YouTube channel feed, but also in my Twitter feed as well. I have sent it out to Max and Phil as well. So if you do go to Twitter, please do retweet it and get them to retweet it as well. We need that, especially this weekend. There are some big protests going on. I was thinking about going to the one in Sheffield, but again, I'm still not very comfortable about going to protest that size, especially with COVID still about. So at least again, if you're like me and you feel a bit uncomfortable about going to these protests, then at least do sign that petition. It does work. It does have an effect. And especially this weekend, we need the Lords to act. There is also, again, if you look around, there is a template you can send and write to the House of Lords, although I do this in an email now because it will get there quicker. But we need them to very, very much vote this down, or else we could see a very, very draconian bill passed here in the UK, and that would be very, very worrying, especially if you are pro-EU as well, because now the government could potentially just shut down protests to rejoin the EU. So like I say, you want this bill killed. Oh. So there's going to be a lot of obviously protests happening this weekend, and like I say, I do hope we succeed, because if not, that's going to be a whole nother fight we have to fight now to try and overturn this bill. So we do have to fight this obviously very tooth and nail, and of course I think it's going to come down to the wire, especially this bill at the moment in the House of Lords. But that's not the only thing, of course, going to the House of Lords as well that needs to die in there as well, or shall we say be amended and hit back to the Commons. And basically said we're not going to pass it because it's absolutely authoritarian and draconian, and why on earth are you trying to pass such a dangerous bill? Even the police have basically turned around and said we don't want this bill. We've already got the powers to deal with protest. Why are you giving us such draconian powers? So yeah, so it is bad. Very, very bad indeed. So, yeah. In terms of next week, what's going to happen? Well, expect Partygate to continue. Look out for more MPs sending their letters, or publicly at least sending their letters. Of course, I think we're very, very much just waiting on to see what happens, of course. But the big question is, of course, can Boris survive this? Because I'll tell you now, if Boris somehow manages to survive to the next potential general election, which, another thing that came, by the way, many Tory MPs are saying the next general election is either going to be a year or 2 years away. So that's very interesting. They think, of course, countdown to another general election. As I've said before, Labour should be releasing their manifesto early. It has and would play very, very good if they can get out the front and say, look, this is our manifesto, this is what we're going to push for at the next general election, and try and at least get a head start in pushing through there and talking about their policies. Because of course you get a 6-month announcement, and trying to explain some policies that can be quite complicated to the British public sometimes needs a bit of time. So I've said this before, I've said it right at the start. Practically all last summer, Starmer needs to release a manifesto and say, this is what Labour is going to stand for, this is what I'm going to stand for, and they can tweak it between now and then again against the general election. So it will be, in all honesty, I think a very good move if they actually did something like that. So, so as always, come to the end of our lovely walk together today. So as always, thank you very, very much for joining me. I don't know if you can see him through the mist. There you are, pony in the mist. So as always, thank you very much one and all for joining me on today's Good Morning Walk. Like I say, Boris Watch still continues. And of course it will either end when Boris resigns or to the point where he has survived yet again. So please do remember to hit that like and share button on your way out. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page. And of course, my one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And there's also the YouTube memberships now open as well. And as always, thank you one and all for joining me this weekend. It's been a very fun walk as always. Of course, we'll see you next weekend for another Good Morning Walk. And of course, we've got more videos following the bizarre fallout, especially all next week, covering the ongoing chaos that is currently British politics. But as always, have an absolutely safe weekend. As always, if you can't be safe, be sensible. And of course, we'll see you next weekend for another Good Morning Walk.